once, but my ass.
I'm only 4. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I am your host, and we're discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 75th year of the award at the 79th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 2006. Today's guest is appearing for the 6th time. You last heard him discussing Manipulation and the nominees of 1991. Please welcome back Gordon McNulty. Hello, Gordon.
Hello, I'm glad to be back. I almost said welcome back to you, but that's not my thing. That's for you to do. Off to a great start as always.
Things will get off the rails very quickly, I imagine.
I'm sure they will.
But I just want to take a moment and say this is the 75th episode of this podcast. It's just like I didn't really imagine I'd make 75 episodes, but
hell yeah,
I'm here. It's like I kept up with this thing every single week. There's something coming out, and I guess there's more because the number doesn't include the bonus episodes or whatever, which are technically still episodes, even though I don't have a guest or anything. But still, 75 and more.
Hell yeah. Proud of you.
Yeah. But anyway, remind us, Gordon, what is your familiarity with the Best Animated Short category?
Well, this episode did sort of awaken a secondary, like in the past I've talked about how my dad had a lot of like old Looney Tunes and Disney shorts loaded up on his laptop, and we would watch them whenever. But this episode reminded me because of one of these shorts in particular. When I was in middle school, there was kind of a free period almost type thing before lunch where you would sign up for, oh, here's these different themed activities that different teachers were hosting. One of them was a Star Trek one, and that's how I've watched the minimal amount of Star Trek I've watched. And one of the history teachers would show a bunch of animated shorts, and that would be the 20 minutes before lunch was showing cartoons and stuff. And one of these was one of those, and I had forgotten about that whole concept until just now. But yeah, I've had exposure to some of the animated shorts of old. And I've had exposure to plenty more from being on this show so many times. So it's an ever-changing, ever adding to that list of the ones I've seen because of you and because of your show.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to have helped that. And it's I'm very curious to find out which one of these is the one you've seen before. All right. And I
probably the most obvious one, but
okay, never mind. I was actually thinking something else, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
But yeah. But before we get into any of these nominees, I know this podcast is very short film centric here, but there is also a Best Animated Feature category at the Academy Awards. So to be fair to them, Gordon, I will list off the names of the nominees for Best Animated Feature this year, and I want you to tell me in just one word what you think of each one, or simply say you haven't seen it. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. First, we have the winner, Happy Feet.
And I only have to say one word?
One word.
Penguins. It's fine. I don't know if I have that much concise to say about. I've seen it. It has a fun anecdote about Prince letting them use his music and recording a whole new song for it. Nicole Kidman's in it, I think, or maybe that's the other Penguins one. I don't remember anything about it.
That's a lot more than one word, Gordon. I'm gonna have to cut you off.
I know. I'm sorry. I tend to do that.
Number two.
My one word is Kidman.
Okay. She might not even be in it. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen it. Yeah. But number two is Cars.
Cars. I mean, it's Cars. That's the word.
Cars. Yes. And number three, we have Monster House.
I haven't seen it, but my one word is Buscemi.
Buscemi.
My apologies to Steve.
Is he even in that?
I think he's the old guy.
Now I just want to look up these films just to make sure we know who's in these movies.
Yeah, these might not have either of the people I just said.
Like I think it's worth just double checking
Okay,
these
Happy
casts.
Feet. The
Happy
cast of
Feet.
Happy Feet is wild.
Oh yeah,
Robin
Nicole
Williams,
Kidman is
Elijah
in it.
Wood, Hugh Jackman, Nicole Kidman, Hugo Weaving, Anthony LaPaglia, Brittany Murphy, Steve Irwin.
Mhm.
That's
And
weird.
Steve Buscemi is in Monster House, as well as Nick Cannon and Maggie Gyllenhaal, Kevin James, Jason Lee, Catherine O'Hara, Kathleen Turner, and Fred Willard.
And Cars was a cast of unknowns, funnily enough.
Complete unknowns. No one
Yeah,
knows who's in Cars.
nobody knows. They're uncredited.
They made sure
It's
to kill
amazing.
everyone who knew. Like the casting, the
Mystery.
director, and everyone is now dead because they didn't want
They're,
to know who voiced those abominations.
they actually did grant sentience to actual cars. And then most fucked up, they took it away. That's weird.
Mhm. And now they just live in Cars Land at Disneyland.
Yes, exactly. This is a weird riff. How has this segment gone on previous 2000s episodes?
It's gone a lot smoother most of the other times. It
I'm
was just
sorry.
the guests would just say one word and I would move on.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. The only time it's ever like there's been any kind of elongated bit in it was when I it was the first time I'd recorded the segment. It was with Christoph. It was like I had I had said ready and he had paused for a bit and I just assumed that meant go. And so I said number one, the winner, whatever it was that year. Or he was like, I didn't even say yes yet.
Oh
And that
no.
was the whole bit. And then we just like laughed a bit and then went into it. But now we've spent like a few minutes on this when normally it takes
Oh,
less than a
hey,
minute.
you said up front there was gonna be tangents.
Yeah,
I
it's
I
impossible to avoid with us.
I am allergic to not pursuing the bit. As we will see with at least I did go on a kind of an extended bit in my notes about one of these shorts. So
And
we'll see how that part goes.
and I'll even say up front, this is the longest script I've written for any of my podcast episodes up to this point. Specific, like there's a few reasons, but one of them is because I wanted to go on a bit for one of them.
You'll love
But
to see.
anyway, uh, do you want to talk about Give 'Em Hell Harry just to pad this episode out anymore?
Sure. I'm sure we left
No,
some stuff on the table for Harry Truman.
Our first nominee and the year's winner is The Danish Poet, directed by Toril Kove. This is Kove's second nomination and first win after her nomination for My Grandmother Ironed the King's Shirts in 1999. This is also the 30th nomination for the National Film Board of Canada, as well as their sixth and final win as of this episode's recording. It's funny to me that at this point, the NFB has a win rate of one win for every six nominations, which is worse than random chance. And the stats just get worse and worse with their future nominations. The Danish Poet, however, the story has its origins in Kove wanting to tell a story about how our lives shape us, how the interconnected web of a person's life leads them to big moments of said life. Specifically, choosing to center on a romantic relationship because those are some of the most impactful things in not only shaping a person's life, but also creating new life as well. Covey originally wanted to tell another personal biographical story like her previous film, but when she started drafting a story about how her father almost went to art school rather than the architecture school where he met her mother, Covey eventually decided that it's a bit too personal and made it a fictional story instead. The final story for The Danish Poet was written long before the film was in production, long enough that Covey herself has no clue when it was written. But not long after the success of My Grandmother Ironed the King's Shirts did The Danish Poet enter production. Like that film, it was a co-production between the NFB and the Norwegian Film Institute, with the film eventually taking 3 years to complete, although one of those years was due to Kove taking maternity leave, and the other two being made up of mainly Kove, doing the animating with a handful of other animators helping out, with the line work being done with traditional pen and paper, and then doing the coloring digitally. The film is also narrated in both English and Norwegian by renowned Norwegian actress Liv Ullman, personal choice by Kove. They couldn't find Ullman's agent, so they just sent a script to her in Norway and just prayed she would get it and respond. It took 3 months, with production almost giving up hope, but Ullman called them up, with her first words being, "I hope I'm not too late." Ullman had been vacationing in Florida and had only gotten to her Norwegian mail at that point. The film is about Casper Jorgensen, the titular Danish poet, who is desperate for inspiration. After reading Kristen Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset, he decides to go to Norway to meet the author and become inspired. In Norway, he also meets a farmer and also meets his daughter Ingeborg, whom he wishes to marry, but she is already engaged to another man, much like Kristen Lavransdatter. The two part ways, but fate has a way of bringing star-crossed lovers together. Gordon, what did you think of the Danish poet?
I thought it was cute. I really liked the animation style. It was out of the five, it was the most uh, interesting on an animation level. I liked the like sort of plain lines and flat colors. I thought that really worked to its advantage of making it seem like kind of like a storybook type presentation of its
Mhm.
story. And with the actual story it was telling, I thought it was sweet. I thought it was it's the longest of the group by like a factor of over 10 minutes, but it doesn't feel like it, which is pleasant.
Mhm.
Go through all these back to back, and yeah, I thought it was a good, pleasant little short that I'm happy I watched.
Yeah, it's a very I really like this short. I found myself like I liked her nominations on my first go through, but Total Cove I've just found a real appreciation for on this second run through of the nominees. He's I Her style is her while it's simple, it's got just such a charm to it, such a unique kind of voice to it. It kind of reminds me of like Mark Baker, except with more movement and just generally better. Sorry, I'm Mr. Baker. I didn't mean that comparison, but also I did. Uh, anyway, and like you were saying, the storybook kind of style with like the I understand that wall-to-wall narration can be pretty bad at times. I said as much when we were talking about the Periwig Maker a few years back, but
It's
here,
Liv Ullman. Come
especially
on.
since it's Liv Ullman, and which speaking of which, I really love how in the short itself, oh, there's a part where the Danish poet he's reading a book about these like I think it's called like Nordic confusions, where it's about a bunch of like Norwegian people who are actually Danish, and of course Swedish people who are actually Norwegian. Because and Liv Ullman is in the book because she people keep thinking she's Swedish when she's actually Norwegian.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
there's lots of little good like jokes like that are in the background. The cow that keeps trying to climb up the ramp and sliding back down was
mhm,
it's a well animated
yeah,
short. It's packed with that sort of thing without
it
feeling
it's
overstuffed. And I
really
think yeah,
yeah, it's just really full of life. I've
yeah.
uh, just a whole world has been made here. Like I there so years ago I made this like video of every single short film to win best animated short, or it's just like a short little clip from each one. And one of the clip I chose for Danish Poet was a scene early in the film where it's like you have the postman just writing down to get the Danish poet's letter to the author, or and it's just like and just that little shot, it's just like there's all these different people just walking around. It's like it's a very complicated scene, but at the same time it's just serving the simple purpose of just postman takes the letter, or and it's just like that's just kind of the philosophy of the whole film. It's just like while the scenes themselves can be like simple in purpose, it's just like there is just so much attention to detail. And despite its simple animation style, well, it's just like it is a very complicated setting thing that, and
Yeah.
there's a very clear just love for the art and love for what she's making, and it's just like it's great film.
It's simplistic but not simple in its animation. Like you
Yes.
have these big sweeping like a lot of like camera movement in this short with
Mhm.
some of those shots. Everything with the hair
Yes.
is really like affectionately detailed and like over the top in a way it works really well. The
My
There's
favorite
like
bit with
the visual sort of framing device of the seeds in the sky that fold out and become the baby and then fold back in and all that sort of stuff. It's like you can she conveys a whole lot in relatively little visually. Even just like
Mhm.
all the character designs are just like two dots, a big nose, and a line for a face, and they're very expressive, and it's just cute. It's very cute.
Yeah, it truly is. And it's no surprise that this did end up getting like adapted into like a children's storybook and stuff. I think like maybe all of her films have been adapted into like children's book as well. I'm not sure, but anyway. And speaking of the hair, my favorite part of the hair, like it, it's just generally like fun to watch the hair, the different ways she portrays it, like the different like ways it's like weaved and things like that. But I love the scene when they're on the boat together, her, and then it's like it's wrapped up in the little Marge Simpson kind of top bit,
Yeah.
but then it's just like on the boat, it just unravels in the wind and it just starts flowing behind her. It's a very beautiful, just a bit of motion, and it's just like I really like seeing that. And like we were saying, just this whole short is filled with just like little bits of animation that are just like very like impressive or beautiful or just fun. It's like
Yeah. The
this has a very un understated sense of humor. It's like you're kind of saying, but there's a lot of jokes just about the cultural differences, I guess, between Norwegians and Danes. And it's like I really like the bit after the author Sigurd Undset dies. It's like the two characters like deciding to go to the funeral, and like with Ingeborg, it's just like why would I go to the funeral? She's Danish. It's just
yeah.
like you can go to funerals for people even if they're Danish. And the other guy is just like, why would I go to the funeral? It's in Norway. It's just, and the therapist is like, just go.
Yeah. There's a lot of little bits like that. Like even like this is showing how interesting of a short it is. These are bits that like I didn't even write down in my notes, but I'm still just remembering because they're just funny. The like little tip of the boat just opening up, just like a full triangle opening up to let people walk off, and the guy on the bike that rides into the boat and then rides off of the boat on his bike. Um, the like angry farm dog on the string that's like the most dynamic moving part of the entire short. That's like a rabid little like ball
Mhm.
of dog that like barks and runs around and was very fun. And then you have that little bit of that dog and the other dog having a little romance and having a litter of puppies as displayed with the Polaroid pictures. There's
Yes.
just a lot of very striking visuals in this, which is made all the more impressive by how relatively unassuming the visuals are. Like I don't think there's a single section of because from what I was reading, it was like animated by hand and then colored in digitally, and
Mhm.
all of the colors are flat, except for maybe like the reflections of the houses in the water when they're leaving the boat. But other than that, everything is like there's no shading whatsoever, which I appreciated as someone that cannot shade when I try to draw or whatever. It doesn't draw attention to itself on an animation level, but when you're watching for it, there's a lot of subtly very interesting things being done with the animation. I think that really holds up to make it an interesting piece.
Mhm. And I just want to say, like, when after like researching this, I went and watched one of Toro Kove's other films, a non-nominated short called Threads. And I just want to say that short is absolutely beautiful. It's like about this like these people who are like all like grabbing to these threads in the sky and then get pulled away. And it's just like at the end of the string is like it's meant to be like these are like different life events, and for this one woman it's like it grabs and pulls her to like a child, which is I believe is a metaphor for like just adopting a child. And then it's like it's just this beautiful story about motherhood, and it made me
That's
want to cry at the end. It's like just recommending it out there. Threads, Toro Cove, amazing, beautiful, probably my favorite film she's
yeah,
made.
nice. And I do just want to, as my closing thoughts here, there was a point about halfway through watching all of these where I realized that across all five nominated shorts, Liv Ullman is the only person that speaks any dialogue.
Oh yeah, I didn't real yeah. It's the only
The
it's the
only
only.
spoken words across all 5 of these shorts spoken by Liv Ullman, which is very funny for best animated short.
Mhm. Yeah, and I just wanted to say it's like I did also. Well, never mind. I'll save it for the actual film that comes up. But there's like another film that has another version of it that does have dialogue. But we'll get there when we get there. But yes, Liv Ullman, icon. We love her.
Exactly.
We live
That
her.
actually does. I do have a question that if anyone is qualified to answer this, it would be you. Has there ever, or how many times in the history of this category, is there a lineup where every nominee has spoken dialogue
I have
or
no.
narration or any like spoken language?
So I haven't really thought about that. I haven't gone through it like
Yeah, you don't have
kept
to
them.
have an answer now, but I am curious, like, because every time I've been on, there's always been at least one that doesn't have any. And I'm curious if that's just been like a weird fluke or if it is like a trackable pattern that there's always at least one that's purely, animation and music and sound without any spoken dialogue. But
Like
that's
I would want
yeah.
to like just thinking on top of my head, like I would want to say like maybe in the early years back when like the silly symphonies and stuff were like really in the category. I would want to say that maybe some of those years just don't have any spoken dialogue, but I wouldn't be too sure. After we
Oh,
record, I might go through it
yeah.
just like look through see like any years that lean either way where it's like either
Yeah.
all of them have dialogue or none of them have dialogue.
I'm curious because I wonder if there are any years that have all of one or all of the other.
And just off the top of my head, if I were to guess, I would say that there's probably quite a few years that have like where all the shorts have no dialogue, but maybe only a few have all shorts with dialogue. Because I just by like instinct, I want to say that's like more often than not, the films tend to be dialogueless.
That would make sense, as evidenced by this year, where 4 out of 5 are.
Mhm. But yeah, truly anything can happen though. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I don't have anything more to say about the Danish poet necessarily.
and neither do I, outside of the fact that it's a really great short, and I want people to appreciate Torokova. She is great. We love women.
Yeah.
Anyway, our second nominee is Lifted, directed by Gary Rydstrom. This is the first and only Oscar nomination for Gary Rydstrom in this category, and the 8th nomination for Pixar. And I must say, Gary Rydstrom is an unusual nominee in this category. While this is his only nomination for Best Animated Short, Gary Rydstrom has been nominated for 19 other Oscars and won 7. This is because Gary is more commonly known as a sound designer, and all of those Oscar nominations coming from his sound mixing and editing work. But let's step back a bit. Rydstrom went to the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts, and from there got a job at Skywalker Sound, which is, of course, the sound design division of Lucasfilm. Gary Rydstrom has been working at Skywalker Sound ever since. He has credits on 147 different films, starting with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and with Rydstrom really hitting his stride in the 90s, being instrumental to the sound design of Terminator 2, Jurassic Park, Titanic, and Saving Private Ryan, winning his 7 Oscars for those 4 films. Also, along with his 2 wins for Terminator 2, he also got 2 nominations for his work on Backdraft, meaning in his first time being Oscar nominated, he got 4 Oscar nominations and 2 wins, all in one ceremony. I don't
Oh
have the
yeah.
stats to back it up, but that feels like an unparalleled feat. But anyway, what's most relevant today is that Gary Rydstrom has been doing the sound design for Pixar films ever since Luxo Jr. in 1986, and today's nominee was a way Pixar thanked him for his decades of excellent work. But before I move on to the nominee at hand, I want to briefly spotlight his other directorial efforts. With Pixar, he also directed the Toy Story short film Hawaiian Vacation. With Lucasfilm, he directed his only feature film effort, Strange Magic. And recently, Rydstrom directed a film called Philharmonia Fantastique, The Making of an Orchestra, which is a blend of animation and live action, taking us inside and around the various instruments in an orchestra, as well as visualizing the music they make. Very Fantasia inspired, and this film, or rather the album version, also won Rydstrom a Grammy Award for Best Engineered Album Classical. Also, Gary Rydstrom directed the English dubs for a handful of Ghibli films, including Tales from Earthsea, The Secret World of Arrietty, From Up on Poppy Hill, and The Wind Rises. Lastly, he was the original director for the Pixar feature Newt, but executives lost faith in the project during pre-production, and the planned 2012 release ended up going to Brave. But enough dilly-dallying, let's return to the film we're here to actually discuss. Gary Rydstrom says the film came from a midlife crisis. He desperately wanted to make a movie, and with his long-time relationship with Pixar, they let him make a short. The crew was made up of many Pixar artists who had just finished their work on Cars. Of course, a film being directed by Gary Rydstrom means it will focus a lot on sound design, with very limited usage of music and zero dialogue. Also, Gary Rydstrom says the film is inspired by his experience as a sound designer, how he has to deal with these gargantuan pieces of equipment with many little knobs and buttons, all the while many people in the room stand by and judge his work. In short, Rydstrom has said the film is about how much he wants to beat up a sound mixing console. Lifted is about a young alien trying his first abduction, with an instructor grading him. The young alien is overwhelmed by the massive control panel, which is a seemingly endless series of unlabeled switches. Hijinks ensue. So, I've never been the biggest fan of this short film. Like, of course, it's a Pixar short. I've had the opportunity to watch it many times, whether it be on... I'm not sure what DVD it released with. I'm pretty sure it's Ratatouille, but I'm not totally sure. But
that would make sense timeline wise.
And also I did see it before in the Pixar short film collection that they released in like the early 2010s. And it's like, and I never really cared for it much then. Like, it was a fine short, but I was never the biggest fan. But here I found a little bit more appreciation with it, especially reading Gary Rydstrom talk about it. Especially he something he pointed out in the interviews I read with him was how he had Michael Giacchino, the classic Pixar composer. He made the little bit of music that we do hear in this film, which plays every time we think the alien has successfully started abducting the guy before something inevitably goes wrong. And he's very joyous about the fact that he never let Michael Giacchino finish that piece of music, because he only wrote the first half of it. And it's like, yes, that's all we need. And it's just like things like that. It helps me see a lot of just the littler details that are in this film. Just makes me, and while I still don't love this film, I do just enjoy it for what it is. I think it's just a solid Pixar short. It's not one of their best, but it's a good time.
It's cute. It's fun.
It's cute.
It's got some good bits. There's a few jokes that, this was the one that I was saying that I did remember having seen in middle school, and I feel like it's perfectly pitched for like a middle school or a younger audience, where it's a very easy concept. It's easy to look at. There's nothing really that is challenging the audience, because it's a Pixar short that played before Cars. You don't need some sort of like grand thesis or whatever. You get a butt joke, you get a Wilhelm scream, like it's good for a young audience, and that's who it's aimed towards. And we're here judging it on its Academy Award eligibility merits, and that's not what it's inherently intended for. And I can appreciate it from that angle, but it's fine. It's just fun. It's a good time. I'm not like gonna be thinking about it a ton afterwards. This is maybe going to... Never mind. Ignore that lead up to this sentence. If this has anything to say about my appreciation for this short, is that when I started Letterboxd and I started logging things I had seen in the past, and there was a point where I was like, oh shit, I've seen a ton of animated shorts. Let me like go through and log as many of those as I remember having seen when I was a kid. This was not one of those. I had entirely forgotten that this short existed until I started watching it today, and was like, oh yeah, I watched this in a middle school classroom, like when I was in middle school, and have not thought about it since. Did not remember it existed. And some of those other ones in that class, whatever. I did remember, like the Birds on a Wire one that might be called Birds on a Wire. I don't
Or the
remember what
birds.
for the birds, yes. Or and now this is speaking of getting titles confused. It's either titled Jerry's Game or Gerald's Game, and the other
Jerry's
one
Game.
is the horrific Stephen King thing.
The Stephen King one is Gerald's Game.
Okay, so Jerry's Game.
Jerry's Game.
I remember that. I remember some other ones that we watched in there that I can't remember the titles of, but like this one did not have any sort of a lasting impact on me other than, oh yeah, I've seen it before.
Mhm. When you had mentioned that it's like, oh, I one of these I had seen in the class or whatever, or like part of me was hoping that's like your teacher was like into animated shorts and would have shown you a Danish poet or something, but it's like,
That would have
oh
been cool, but
no, it's
no.
just the Pixar shorts. Okay, makes
It's the
sense.
Pixar short. I think it was almost exclusively Pixar shorts in that little pre-lunch thing, which is sure, why not?
uh, but yeah,
Oh,
lifted, like you pretty much said it all. It's just it the film is exactly what it was meant to be, which is just a little thing to watch uh before watching a whole movie, and also just a man's midlife crisis desperately wanting to make a film.
yeah, that's if it gets any other props for me, it's because of the behind the scenes uh uh context for it. I think that gives it gives me a greater appreciation for it for that alone.
I'm glad Gary Rydstrom had fun with this, and also I
Yeah,
want to say the voice of the alien who's like controlling everything and like getting frustrated. Uh, the voice of him comes from two sources. One is Gary Rydstrom himself, and two is Gary Rydstrom's dog.
love that.
Just another fun little tip. There's a lot of just fun little tidbits, and like the Wilhelm scream is another one. It's like he included that just as like a shout out to Ben Burtt and Star Wars and everything.
Of course.
It's just like he clearly had a lot of fun making this, and it's just like that's all that really matters.
Yeah, it's fine. It's if there's another one of I mean if there's any of these that I'm going to rewatch, like if you had to sit me down in front of one of them again, it would probably be this one because it's short and inoffensive. Like I like Danish Poet more, but that's like what, 18 minutes?
Yeah, it's a
Uh
it's a commitment at the very least.
yeah, this is like not to spoil too much of my thoughts for the end of the episode, but like it's probably the most rewatchable or whatever. I don't know.
I would definitely agree. It's like it's one that you can easily just watch at any point, get a light bit of entertainment out of, and then just move on with your life. It's definitely, well, I was going to say it's the least plot heavy, but that isn't true.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've said too much. Let's
Yeah.
just move on.
We've been talking a lot longer than I realized. And we still got 3 more to do.
Oh yeah, we're almost at an hour, or at least like 40 minutes.
We're like 45 minutes into this. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
So we will move on to our third nominee, which is The Little Match Girl, directed by Roger Allers. This is the first and only nomination for Allers, as well as producer Don Hahn in this category, but the 47th nomination for Disney. This is the fourth and final short film released by Disney that was originally intended to be included in a potential Fantasia 2006 film, alongside previous Oscar nominees Destino and Lorenzo, as well as One by One, which was released direct to video on the DVD of Lion King 2, so it was never eligible for Oscar contention. And I just want to say, in previous episodes, I said there was only 3. I forgot about this one. I forgot about Little Match Girl. Anyway, for our nominee. What was that?
I just said I wonder why.
I it just didn't show up in the research I was doing. Other places were
Yeah.
saying like there was only 3, and I was like, okay, there's only 3. But I was like, wait, Little Match Girl, that is also there. That was also Fantasia. For our 2 men nominated here, both of them have very similar timelines at Disney, though in different positions. Don Hahn started out as an assistant to Disney legend Wolfgang Reitherman during the production of The Fox and the Hound, before becoming a production manager on The Black Cauldron, and eventually finding his longtime position of full-fledged producer in the 90s, starting with Beauty and the Beast, which earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. For Allers, he starts out working with Steven Lisberger on the film Tron, before becoming an animator on Oliver and Company in the 80s, then becoming a storyboard artist on several of Disney's early Renaissance films, being appointed head of story on Beauty and the Beast, and then eventually co-directing The Lion King with Rob Minkoff, which was also produced by Don Hahn. The Lion King was, of course, one of Disney's biggest successes in their entire history. So where do these men go from here? Allers not only helped write the stage adaptation of The Lion King, which earned him a Tony Award nomination, but he was also a main figure in the early production of The Emperor's New Groove, back when it was called Kingdom of the Sun. After 4 years on the project, Allers left the film due to creative differences with the director Mark Dindal and producer Peter Schneider. Allers would eventually leave Disney after two times he headbutted with Michael Eisner, former CEO of Disney. First was with today's nominee, which I'll talk about more later, and second was with another feature film idea Allers had called Tam Lin, based on a Celtic folktale, which Eisner declined to greenlight, not because of any personal issues with the project, but because he knew that Roy E. Disney liked the project, and therefore he wanted it canned, because this was the time when Roy E. Disney was trying to get Michael Eisner ousted. At this point, Allers left Disney for Sony Pictures Animation, originally hoping to make Tam Lin there, but Allers was put instead as the director of Open Season. Roger Allers' last major credit was directing the film The Prophet, based on the Khalil Gibran book, which features animation from many different prolific animators. Going back to Don Hahn, he never had that falling out with Disney. Post Lion King, Don Hahn kept producing many of their films, including The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Atlantis: The Lost Empire, and Eddie Murphy's The Haunted Mansion. Don Hahn was also the director of the different host sequences in Fantasia 2000, which I believe also led him to be a major producer of Fantasia 2006, alongside Baker Bloodworth and Roy E. Disney, the three of them each being major figures in the 4 finished shorts. And I imagine Fantasia 2006 got canceled because of Michael Eisner's feud with Disney. After this, Don Hahn's work at Disney became focused towards Disney's documentaries, mainly the Disney Nature series of animal documentaries, but also the films Waking Sleeping Beauty and Howard, taking on various producing, writing, and directing capacities, with Howard being his last film to date. Let's now go back to The Little Match Girl. When creating Fantasia 2006, the focus was going to be on world music and different cultures. They were trying to find stories they could tell without words, eventually finding themselves drawn toward The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen, which I would like to note has been adapted into another Oscar-nominated short film from 1937, and Gordon was also on that episode nearly a year and a half ago. In the production, hey, and now you're back here.
Hey, it's almost like we planned that.
Yeah, it's almost as if we mentioned that in the episode, and then 70 episodes later, I think, we were here. Anyway, in the production, while Andersen's story makes no mention of place, the film puts the film in Russia and scores the film with Russian composer Alexander Borodin's String Quartet No. 2 in D major, third movement, Notturno Andante. A lot of work also went into perfecting the visual style, using watercolors for the backgrounds, perfecting this color scheme so that the Russian winter feels overbearing, having sucked out all the color of the world to contrast with the warm fantasy sequences. The production was challenging, but perhaps the biggest challenge was with Michael Eisner and other Disney executives who wanted to change the Little Match Girl's dour ending. Allers had moved on from Disney, but kept coming back to them to work more on the short, with the executives asking for a different ending. Eventually, though, Allers won out. He got to keep the original ending. The Little Match Girl had its qualifying theatrical run in September of 2006 before being released as a bonus feature on the Platinum Edition DVD of The Little Mermaid. The film is set on a cold Christmas Eve as a little girl tries to sell matches, but not a soul gives her any attention. Dejected, she retreats into an alleyway, freezing cold. For a tinge of warmth, she lights a match and finds herself imagining a furnace. When the match runs out, she lights another and begins fantasizing about sleigh rides, and her grandmother keeps lighting her matches to keep the fantasy going. But eventually she runs out of matches, she succumbs to the cold, and her grandmother carries her away forever. Gordon, what did you think of The Little Match Girl?
Yeah, it's fine. I while you were saying all that, I did have to go Google this short again to remind myself of the visual style of it, because I could not remember what the titular little match girl looked like. Uh, the the animation feels like you can tell if you had sat me down in front of this short and told me it was Disney, but not told me what era, I probably could have pinpointed even specifically like within 2 years of this, because it feels so much like it's at the transitional period of like, are we still doing 2D animation? Are we not? Are we trying to do 2D but like infused with more of a digital kind of 3D style? And it all just feels so uncanny in that regard. It like really, they haven't quite nailed it in a way that like even Princess and the Frog a few years later, they do have they find a way to like merge the traditional 2D style with a more digital look, and this they just don't have it,
Mhm.
and it just really unsettled me the whole time. There's something about the movement and the line art and the coloring that all feels just a little uncanny. And that's I did sort of skim through the first little match girl from our first episode. That, I mean, that's a whole other type of unsettling animation style. I sent you a screenshot because I forgot just how kind of terrifying the little match girl looks in that. But like, at least that's a visual style that I can like latch onto as this is something specific. And this one, the 2006 one, just isn't. It's just, I let me go back to the Google tab that I opened again so I can remind myself what I'm even talking about, because I've forgotten over the course of that rant. Yeah, no, this is nothing visually.
I so I both agree and disagree with you because it's like, while I really like the way this thing looks, I think it's gorgeous, and it's like for me it's like, while it intentionally is a bit like gray and drab, like during like the city scenes and whatever, I think the character design is really nice. I think the fantasy sequences are gorgeous, and it's just like, I love the backgrounds. I love just the way it looks, but at the same time, it's a bit too pristine for me. It's very clearly like this big budget Disney animated film, and it's just like I would want something a bit rougher, I guess I would want like, I think it's just too clean to really get you emotionally invested in this story. And it's just like, and while and to compare it again to the 37 film, it's like that one also has a similar issue of being very stylized and being very like pristine. Like, the little match girl, like, you call her disturbing, I call her very cutesy. It's
It's
just like,
cutesy in a way that's like sickeningly like overly sugary, overly saccharine in like, oh, her eyes are going to be huge and they're all blue. There's no sclera to be seen. And her cheeks are so plump and rosy that it makes her look like she's got like 5 o'clock shadow, and she's got a pig nose. She's got a full-on pig nose.
but
It's like those like we're breeding our dogs to the point that like the cute dogs look like little mongrel monsters, and she looks like that. Like this is selective breeding, but for cartoon child.
but the thing about that, and I just want to say, I prefer the original to this one. And I think
I do too.
part of why
After all
that
that, I still do.
part of why I think that works is because it is overly cutesy in the way that so many other films from that time period are overly cutesy. And it puts you in this mindset of like just a typical like harmonizing kind of film, where it's like, where it's just generic cute child goes through like a fairy tale story.
And
But
fucking guys.
but yes, but then it's like the story we're in is the little match girl, and it's just like, you're not expecting to see this cute fucking character die, but she fucking does. As like, to me, that style just really adds to kind of the heartbreak of the story. And plus, I
Yeah.
just think like the fantasy sequences are so beautiful in that. I think they're so fucking well done. And it's just like,
Yeah.
and while this film is beautiful too, who I, in my opinion at least, and that you disagree a little bit, but I think that one just does a better job with
Yeah.
that story. But at the
That
same
one,
time, I still love this film. I still love the way it looks. I still love the story being told. But I think like the perfect version of the story would be something a bit rougher, a bit sketchier. Or it's like I think it needs that kind of grit to the film in order to really get that kind of impact.
fundamentally, this shouldn't be Disney. Like,
Yeah.
the fact that they were able to fight for the traditional ending is kind of a miracle in and of itself, but like this feels like Disney doing Eastern European animation drag. Like, we're gonna dress it up to look like, I can't name any Eastern European animators or animation houses off the top of my head, but like we're gonna try and make it look like that, but still in the Disney like house. And it's too much of a clash. There's it just doesn't work for me for whatever reason. There's
Mm.
stuff that does work, but ultimately I just like I don't care. I don't It's not memorable visually to me. And for again, for a short that is all visuals, what else am I supposed to grab from
Mhm.
this? I just eh. I mean that's really as much as I can say about it. It's just like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna watch it again. I don't care. But it's fine.
Yeah, and another thing I want to say, it's like again, I want to preface this by saying I still really love this film, but I have another complaint about it. It's the fact that for a film that wants to be a Fantasia kind of thing, it's like this is made for Fantasia 2006 that never came out. Now, it's like I don't think the story does well to blend itself with the music. Like,
The
and it's
music is
like
not memorable at all. The music feels entirely incidental,
yeah,
almost.
it's like it, and I think part of it is just the fact that it is like a piece that it wasn't made for this film. It's just it wasn't made for this story either. And so it's just like you're just trying to who merge these things together that were never really meant to be together, but it's just like you're just trying to force it to work. And
And
also
it can be
like
done well. Like
hmm,
the Rhapsody in Blue segment of Fantasia 2000, right?
yeah, that one's really good. It's
That
just
one's
like
beautiful.
and
And
it's
this
like
one is, yeah.
and with Fantasia 2000, it's like a lot of those story, like those film and just the original Fantasia as well. They started with the music and built a story on top of it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, for this, they clearly had the story first, and like that's just the truth. I found that in the production information. They had the story first, and then just found a piece of Russian music that they thought could work well with it, and it's just like they just tried to force them together. But it's just like that's not how to do a Fantasia style story, a Fantasia style short. It just doesn't work that way. Again, I love this film, but it's got problems. There's
Yeah.
reasons why it's like not my favorite thing. Hey, but still, I really love it, and it's still one of the best in this lineup. No spoilers. Um,
There.
but yeah, it's just like I. Another thing, just one more little thing. Uh, this film starts out like the first thing we see in this film after like the establishing shot going into the city is like, um, the little match girl. She's trying to sell her matches, but then she gets knocked over by a horse, I think, or whatever, and she spills her matches everywhere. And it's like I expected there to be a sound effect to hear the matches clattering, but I didn't. And it's just like it was just a reminder. It's like, oh yeah, this is Fantasia. They don't do sound effects, and it's just like I feel like it needs sound effects. It's like
Yeah.
the
Put
sound
them
effects
back
would have
in.
helped this. Yes, and it's like to compare it to the 37 film, it's like that one does have like the sounds of the city. It has the clattering of the matches. It has that while also still having being mainly told through the music. It still does do occasional voices and things like that. And it's just like I wish this one took some advice from that one. But then again, it wasn't trying to be that. It wanted to do Fantasia, and it's just like at the end of the day, I maybe once Fantasia 2006 had been canceled, they could have been like since this is Fantasia, let's just add a few sound effects or something. But they didn't.
Yeah, there's so many different ways they could have taken this that they just didn't. And yeah, what can you do?
I
It's a
think
Little Match Girl 2006.
yeah, I think where I eventually come down to this, it's like this is a great film that could have been a masterpiece, in my opinion. And it's just like, and it just isn't, but it's still great. But it's just like it could have done more. I think it's just like I just have an inherent connection with the Little Match Girl story. I think it is just a very beautiful piece of storytelling. And it's just like there is such potential for this film, for the story to be turned into a great short film. But the two examples I've seen that we've seen, like they they get part of the way there, but haven't gone all the way yet. And it's just like I just want to see somebody who does go all the way. And it's like maybe like once I get tired of watching every Christmas Carol adaptation, I could take a sidestep and like look at Little Match Girl adaptation, see if anybody does that story better.
How many times can you watch this child fucking eat shit in the snow?
I don't know. That's the problem with it. It's just like
Yeah.
it is very emotionally draining.
Yeah. Although it's not like Christmas Carol is free of its, there's
But it
there's
has a
another
happy
dead
ending.
kid in the snow in that too, at least hypothetically.
Tiny Tim at least dies off screen
Yeah, and
most of
also
the time.
ends up not dead after all in the good timeline.
Yeah. Oh fuck! That just reminded me of Spirited, the Will Ferrell Ryan Reynolds
Oh,
musical version of Christmas
is-
Carol.
that's a Christmas Carol thing?
Yeah,
God,
it's
that's
like
good.
it's both a modern retelling of Christmas Carol while also saying that like spoilers for the film Spirited, but Will Ferrell's character is Scrooge, but becomes like one of the spirits that helps people turn on Christmas.
That sucks.
And then for the film's version of Tiny Tim, it's a kid who in the fantasy kills himself because he's being bullied by Ryan Reynolds' daughter.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
Christ almighty. What a huh.
Would
Do
you
we
like
want
to
to
move
talk
on to
about
our fourth
Maestro?
nominee?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's move on to our fourth nominee, which is Maestro, directed by Bradley Cooper. No,
Yes,
wait,
okay.
sorry.
I watched this at New York Film Fest. Here we go.
I'm
Maestro.
sorry. There's been a mistake. Moonlight, you've won Best Picture, and also Maestro is directed by Geza M. Toth. This is the first and only nomination for Toth, who received mentorship from many classic animators, including Marcel Yankovic, John Hallas, and Yuri Norstein. Toth began his animation career in 1992 and has been teaching animation since 1994, spending his time split between both teaching and creating. His career is so extensive, while still I have little words that I can really say about him. He's experimented with all kinds of animation mediums across his 30-year career and counting, and even doing plenty of multimedia projects that mix film and theater. He also even runs his own animation studio called KED, K-E-D-D. Truly a prolific career that I don't even know where to begin or end with, so let's just go to the nominee at hand. Maestro was Toph's first foray into CG animation, having done pretty much every other form of animation prior. He uses various animation styles because he wants to do what's best for the film he's making, and he found that CG allowed for his idea of a floating camera better than any other medium he thought of. The film is set inside a dressing room, and Toth got the inspiration by visiting the dressing room of a legend of Hungarian opera at the Hungarian Opera House, every object in the film being something he found in that dressing room. Maestro features a robotic arm tending to a wooden bird, clearly getting ready for a performance, as the camera rotates rhythmically around the room. But what are we waiting for? So, when I first watched this film, I didn't really care for it that much. It's just 4 minutes of a camera rotating around the room as like the bird gets ready for the eventual ending gag. And but for some reason, this film has stuck with me for so long. Like every time I think back to like the category, especially at this time, I just find myself remembering this short because I don't even really understand why, because it is just so simple. But at the same time, it's like I guess I haven't really seen a film like this before or since. It's like there were a few really interesting things the film does, like especially with the way the camera moves, because it's moving kind of like a metronome or something, where it's like it's in one position and then the click it moves to the next one and then the next one, and the next one. We don't hear like a metronome, but it moves as if it is a metronome, or it moves in time with one. And then at the same time, we hear a little bit of underscoring, and as we watch like this robotic arm just move things around and turn on the lights to the mirror, as the bird just kind of sits there and does nothing. Occasionally, it sings like in preparation for its eventual performance or whatever, or but it's mainly just the robotic arm doing everything because like what a fucking layabout bird. Um, but on this rewatch, it's like I ended up really liking this. It's like I just find myself just really appreciate, like, while it is so simple, there isn't any like this is the least complicated film of the bunch. There is no story here. It's just we watch the bird get ready, and then the eventual punchline, which spoilers if you think about wanting to watch this short film, uh it ends up being that the bird is in like a cuckoo clock, and like the robotic arm grabs him and puts him through the hole at the chime of the hour, and that's how it ends. And it's like, first of all, that's a good ending. It's like it's a very
Yeah.
big predictable ending if you're like sitting there thinking about like what could be the ending, what's this bird, and it's just like, but still, like watching it again, I just really appreciate the build up. I appreciate just the little attention to detail that we have here. It reminds me of like other like Pixar films because they're similarly like often not really telling stories, just putting you in a situation, and eventually there's a little payoff at the end. They're very short, but they're good gags usually. Hey, and it's like, and this film is very much that. It's very unassuming, very little in terms of story, but it's sets up this little world, this little scene that we're in very well. It puts you inside it, and it's just like I enjoy being in it. I enjoy being here for 4 minutes, and that's that's as much as I can really say.
Yeah, it's fun. I did I did turn around on this over the course of watching it, because at first all you really have is this weird little wooden bird that like looks like it's fresh out of spore with those huge eyes and
Yes.
beak, and it's just uncomfortable to look at, and the wood textures are, I couldn't tell at first if it was supposed to actually be made of wood or just like it was really bad feather texturing, because the CG is like, you can tell it was made in 2005 as far as
Hmm.
the CGI. It's like not perfect. It's very glossy from today's perspective on it, but like, it's very simple like you were saying. I did pull up the Wikipedia page for all of these very briefly, and that the page for this one, like, it's very minimal, and it says that it has a surprise ending, but it didn't say what it was. So I did have that in my notes of like, okay, yeah, how are you gonna surprise me with the ending to this 4 minute short? And I wasn't thinking too hard about what the ending would be, but then the fact that it was a cuckoo clock did genuinely catch me off guard. I was like, oh, that's a good punchline to this bit. Maybe up like that alone, the very end of the short boosted it like a star rating. If I don't rate things by that, but like it was enough to like kick it up of like, oh, okay, I get what they were doing now. That retroactively makes the setup more funny with the context of what it's all set up for. Like it's a punchline that makes an otherwise kind of bland setup inherently more funny by the fact that that's what the punchline is. And
Hmm.
I liked it more in retrospect than I did while watching it, but that's not bad. That's there's at least I liked it by the end, you know?
Yeah, and it's like you were saying earlier how it's like of these films, like you would say you'd most like to watch Lifted again. But I think this might be the best one to watch twice. It's
Yeah,
just
that
like
was, as I was saying that, I was looking down at my notes and being like, actually maybe Maestro, but like I don't know how much the premise of that might wear thin after watching it on repeat, whereas Lifted is, you know what you're gonna get
Mhm.
start to finish. Whereas this one, maybe it's like, oh well, I get it after so many times. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I've only watched it once. I have not put that to the test. So
Uh,
we'll see.
Yeah. I Yeah, you essentially say it all, and it's just like I and I do like with the context of the ending, I do like the fact that the bird is like clearly like practicing like opera. It's just like he's like la
Yeah.
la 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 la
And he's like
la.
sipping from a drink for like his throat is
Mhm,
like, and then he's like, ah, ah, and that's it. It's a
mhm.
good, it's a good joke. It's a short that has one joke and delivers it very effectively. And sometimes that's all you want.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like you would be surprised how many Oscar winners, not just in this category, but also live action short, are just one joke. And it's just like and it's like some of them can be fairly effective. And it's like some of them are pretty good jokes, but at the same time, they also end up just being one joke. And it's just like it's hard to really think of them too highly when they're just a joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Maestro.
Yeah.
Bradley Cooper's best film
Out of the two.
out of
Correct.
the two.
Yeah. We don't have to talk about Maestro 2023 since most people haven't seen it.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's good.
But yeah, it'll be out on Netflix soon enough. It'll be out on Netflix before this comes out.
Oh, well then, okay.
Yeah,
I don't know why I stumbled to have a
like that
reaction.
that shocked you so much, but
I guess I didn't realize how late in the year it had already gotten, even
yeah,
though, it's Halloween tomorrow.
yeah, it's just like it's being released next month at the time we're recording this. At the time we are recording this, and it'll been released 2 months ago by the time this episode comes out because
Oh, okay, yeah, this is further
this is
ahead than
scheduled for January 18th.
yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
happy Halloween, everyone! Even though it is definitely not Halloween for you at home.
correct.
But yes, let's move on to our fifth and final nominee, which is No Time for Nuts,
Uh,
directed by Chris Renaud and Mike Thurmeyer. This is the first and only nomination for both Renaud and Thurmeyer, as well as the third and final nomination for Blue Sky Studios, and the second and final nomination for the character of Scrat, previously nominated for Gone Nutty in 2003. We'll start with Chris Renaud. He's taken on a variety of creative roles, beginning with his illustration degree from Syracuse University, becoming a graphic designer for a variety of sports brands, becoming a comic book writer from both Marvel and DC, becoming a production designer for various Disney shows, including The Book of Pooh and The Bear in the Big Blue House, as well as working on Lazy Town, and eventually finding himself at Blue Sky Studios, working as a story artist for their first few features, which is also how he ended up as a co-director on No Time for Nuts. He eventually left Blue Sky, becoming a major figure at Illumination Studios, co-directing Despicable Me with Pierre Coffin, and also directing its sequel, which earned him an Oscar nomination, as well as The Lorax, The Secret Life of Pets 1 and 2, and is currently working on Despicable Me 4. As for Mike Thurmeyer, he was more devoted to Blue Sky, especially the Ice Age franchise, as he directed the third, fourth, and fifth Ice Age films, as well as every Scratch short except for the first one. As for our character of Scrat, while before I talked about his development history and the lawsuit around him, today
what?
you're,
Sorry, what?
I'll tell you about it. I don't have time to get into the Scrat lawsuit. I'll tell you about it after we record.
It was Whiplash? Sorry to interrupt your spiel, but that's news to me.
You will be so shocked at the court case. But anyway, I have a long paragraph here. I need to get through it.
Sorry, continue.
I just like to talk about Scrat's lore as described on the Ice Age wiki because it is just very funny to me. One thing to note, however, is that No Time for Nuts is not counted as part of the canon. So, anyway, during the days of the Ice Age, Scrat took an acorn with him everywhere, hoping to find a place to store it for the winter. Scrat also went out looking for other acorns so as to further his storage, looking all over for acorns and nuts. One day he met another saber-toothed squirrel named Scrat, spelled Scratte, whom Scrat fell for. forsaking his acorn for a time until he grew to miss it. However, he returned to his acorn, leaving Scrat behind in a world of dinosaurs. Later, Scrat was responsible for the separation of Pangea into various continents. After this, Scrat found paradise on Earth for himself, an island populated by other saber-toothed squirrels known as Scratlantis, which he ends up sinking and stranding himself in the North American desert. After sinking Scratlantis, Scrat wandered through the landscape with a new acorn in hand. He ended up falling through the ice into a cave. There, he ended up finding a place to finally store his acorn. His acorn, however, powers a UFO that was encased in the ice and accidentally activates it, blasting himself into outer space. Up in space, Scrat ended up creating the solar system, rearranging the planets and causing collision between two planets, creating the asteroid belt. When the UFO rammed into a giant asteroid, Scrat tries to plant his acorn on it, but ends up breaking the asteroid and sending it on its way towards Earth to kill all life upon it. Scrat ends up crashing onto Mars, which had looked like Earth at the time, and kills all vegetation, water, and other life forms on the planet, making it the red planet we know today. At some point, Scrat is now back on Earth and frozen, but some 20,000 years later, washes up on a tropical beach. Scrat lost his acorn, but finds a coconut, which he treated the same as his acorn. However, in storing it, Scrat starts a volcanic cataclysm by mistake. Lastly, at some point in his timeline, Scrat has a son. That's the story of Scrat. For one final note.
Pangea.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Holy shit.
Scrat fucks up everything.
Oh
It
my
is
God.
hilarious.
Oh
But
my God.
for one final note, I do want to bring up the last piece of Scrat media. Once Disney had bought Blue Sky Studios and shortly after shut it down, the YouTube page for Blue Sky uploaded one final Scrat film titled The End. It's a short clip where Scrat comes on screen, finds an acorn, eats it, and leaves, capping off the end of a truly phenomenal legacy, both for the studio and for the character. While there are other popular
Gump was a shitty little dog thing.
While there are other popular animated characters nowadays, such as the Minions, I feel like Scrat is one of the last characters in the style of the golden age of animation. These characters stuck in a constant battle against forces outside of his control. The Scrat shorts, while only really featuring Scrat, still feel almost like a big guy, little guy dynamic in the classic sense, where the big guy is actually God himself. Rest in peace, Scrat. You will be missed.
Not
No
by
time.
me.
No Time for Nuts features Scrat finding a time machine left behind by his deceased time traveler. Scrat accidentally activates it, zapping his acorn to another time, and thus he must go after it to get it back, leading Scrat on a series of hijinks through time. The Scrat shorts really just jumped the shark early. Gordon, what do you think of our final nominee?
I don't know if my laptop picked up every time I groaned when you mentioned the name Scrat during that intro. I have a little prepared thing that I can also read off of, which is my first note before I even started watching this short,
Go ahead.
which is Scrat has always annoyed me. What's your fucking deal? Why do you look like that? Why do you sound like that? Why does everything you do have to be so stressful? Fuck you, you stupid fucking mongoose or whatever the fuck you're supposed to be. Just eat your fucking nut and go extinct like the rest of us and stop fucking screaming, bastard man.
Yeah, he's a saber-toothed squirrel, or also just a combination of a squirrel and a rat.
I do not like him. He's evil and bad. And I like, even as a kid, I was always annoyed and weirdly stressed out by the Scrat shorts that played before Ice Age or whatever movies. Or I probably watched this one as a kid at some point, but I blocked it out, like, even more so than I had blocked out Lifted. Like, I don't like Scrat as a character, and this short did not put in the work to revise that. This one really annoyed me, and it's just because it's about Scrat, who I find very annoying.
I if you couldn't tell by the intro, I am more of a fan of Scrat. I found an appreciation for him.
It was
It's
very fun, I will say, to hear you read off the Scrat lore and to find out all of that he split up Pangea and sang Atlantis and genocided an entire planet.
Yeah, he surely gets up to some hijinks.
He
Uh,
sure does.
but
Conceptually, he's funny, but I don't like having to look at him.
but yeah, it's like when I when I first went through the animated shorts, I had for the first short, Gone Nutty, I had jokingly posted a review like Scrat is a two-time Oscar nominee because I thought the concept was silly. It's Scrat. He's just a fucking and weird little guy who just wants his acorn but ends up not being able to get it. It's just like, why does this guy get two Oscar nominations? But on this time, just like thinking about the character of Scrat,
He
it's
has
just
as
like,
many Oscar nominations as the aforementioned Liv Ullman.
yes. He has more Oscar nominations than uh he has more Oscar nominations than Daffy Duck does.
That's
Who
okay. Now I'm actually mad.
like Daffy
That's
doesn't have
one.
a single one.
Daffy Duck is one of my guys. That's fucked up. I actually that that sucks.
Mm-hmm. And also Porky Pig. There's a lot of characters that
That's crazy.
Scrat has more Oscar nominations than, and but he has as many Oscar nominations as Winnie the Pooh.
Weird.
Yeah. Anyway, but as I was kind of saying in the intro, it's just like Scrat really to me is harkening back to like the classic era of like cartoon characters and like the golden age of animation. It's just like these very classic setups where it's like a very simple setup and just making as many jokes as you could possibly make with them. And oftentimes, like I often praise Tom and Jerry for, or the Scratch shorts do usually go like have a flow to them where it's like this event leads to this event leads to this event leads to this event. It was a very clear through line rather than something like Roadrunner Coyote, where it's just very segmented jokes. And it's like, but No Time for Nuts is not that.
No.
No Time for Nuts is literally just thinking up of various different time periods that Scrat can travel to and making a joke out of each one. It's
I
like
will
he got
say,
like, oh, go
not
ahead.
all of them are time periods. Some of them in the montage later are just things that happen. I wrote them
Yeah,
down.
he
Some
ends
of
up
them are
in like a
just things
locker
that
room and
happen.
things like that.
Or standing in front of a wrecking ball.
Yeah, or standing in front of David in a museum.
Or a mushroom cloud. Okay,
Yeah,
I wrote them down.
Grappenheimer.
Yeah, let's go through the chronology. He goes to Arthur times, King Arthur times, and there's a sword in the stone, and he pulls it out and gets shot at by a bunch of arrows. Then the time machine happens again, and he goes into a coliseum or maybe a bullfighting ring. It's never clear. There's just an animal that makes noises at him.
Mhm.
Uh, and then he's on the iceberg that sinks the Titanic. And and it's not just like, oh, a boat crashing into an iceberg. You do see Titanic written on the boat, so that happens. Uh, and then he goes to, I think, the plot of the movie Ice Age and sees himself.
Yeah,
That happens
and
next.
you see Manny and Sid and
Yeah,
DA go in the background as well.
yeah. And then you see, okay, and then the montage. He's under a rocket that's about to launch, and then he's in a diamond heist, I guess, and then a women's locker room, and then a guillotine, and then Ben Franklin flying his kite and discovering electricity, and then a wall that's getting hit by a wrecking ball, a mushroom cloud, a train, and then the David in a museum, like you mentioned, and then the last oak tree statue or whatever, which was a stupid fucking ending. Uh, but I drafted a list of other quirky situations that Scrat could have found himself in.
Nine
Uh,
11.
no spoilers. So here's my list as I have it written: the crucifixion of Christ, the Challenger explosion, the Watergate break-ins, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, the O.J. Simpson car chase, not the murders, just the car chase. A war, just like generically a war. A guy with a knife, a guy with poison, the Berlin Wall going up, the Berlin Wall coming down, the Zodiac Killer, Y2K if it was real, a shark, and then yes, 9/11.
I like your series events better.
There was another one that I I cut from the list just now that we'll talk. Well, I'll say it off mic because maybe it's a bit too far for this bit, but who knows?
Go ahead, say it. It's no one listens to this podcast. Just say it.
Sorry, the Arbud Dwyer
Oh
suicide.
my god, yes. Yes. Oh my god.
Just have Scrat there like blocking the camera in front of him. That was nestled on my list in between a shark and 9/11.
Yeah. God, I'm thinking of more like events that are perhaps a bit too dark to mention. It's just like it's to the point where it's just not even funny anymore, just ruining the joke. But yeah, God, we need to just make that short, just extend it
Someone,
to like green screen the different things of Scrat. Like,
yeah, do a whole "we didn't start the fire" of Scrat just like being places he shouldn't, like Watergate, to bring it back to him being Forrest Gump if he was a bastard little creature.
like maybe we can contact God, I forgot his name. The guy who first directed Ice Age, Chris Wedge, who also voices Scrat. Like maybe he can make another Scrat short film or a short film that has a legally distinct non-Scrat character. Believe me, it would. There's a lot of red tape around the Scrat character, or at least formerly. They Disney cut through it. Anyway, I would.
I also, while we're talking about Scrat and my hatred of him, just to mention the dead Blue Sky animations. Blue Sky, is that, am I getting that right?
Yeah, Blue Sky
Yeah.
Animation.
Okay, Blue Sky Studios, which
Blue Sky Studios.
is dead. You look at the list of movies they made, and it truly is like, I look at that and my brain just sort of conjures up that Kirstie Alley Stephen Hawking tweet from when he died. The you had a good go at it. Thanks for your input. Like that's how I feel looking, like, discounting the Peanuts movie, which I thought was good, and Robots, which I watched a bunch as a kid and can acknowledge is not good. And I didn't see Ferdinand or Spies in Disguise. And at some point I fell off Ice Age, even as a kid, like tween, being like, these are not good or for me. There's a whole lot of nothing from Blue Sky.
Yeah, it's like I guess I had a better idea of them on my mind, because it's like, and it's like people were like really sad when Blue Sky closed. It's like, yeah, I just like going along with it. It's like, yeah, I Blue Sky's good, isn't it? But then it's just like, yeah, they do Ice Age, and the first Ice, maybe even the first two Ice Ages are all right? But then it's like the next three Ice Ages are forgettable. I Who cares about Rio or Rio 2? No one saw Epic. Peanuts movie is one of the best films ever made, so just ignore that for now. Uh, but then in Ferdinand and Spies in Disguise, I always thought Ferdinand was Illumination, which
Yeah,
shows
I'm looking at
exactly.
Illumination now. Pound for pound, which, like, this is a whoever wins, we all lose. Like, Illumination versus Blue Sky, I don't have a dog in that fight. I'm sorry to say. These
Mhm.
are, oh boy, what a, that's the state of animation these days, and isn't that just sad?
Yeah, but we get some good animation
Yeah,
studios.
yeah.
Like we have God, who are the people who make a Cartoon Saloon? They make good
Yes,
stuff.
I was about to say Cartoon Saloon is still,
Yeah,
fantastic.
and of course there's
Laika
a lot of independent animators out there who make features or
in
foreign ones.
yeah, Laika is great. Studio Ghibli obviously is still
So
alive and
excited for Boy
well.
and the Heron.
It's really good. I saw that at New York Film Fest too. It is great.
Yeah, I just saw the trailer for it in like a theater today at work, and I was just getting chills. Just like, God, I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one.
But yeah, and it's just like in Sony Pictures when they're working with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, they're good too. Like Spider-Verse and Mitchell's versus Machines. But
Yeah,
outside of that, they're kind of dog shit. Um, yeah, and Disney can make good things sometimes. Disney and
Sometimes.
Pixar. It's
Yeah.
like
Pixar's
Luke,
been on a decline lately I haven't seen a lot of the recent
well,
output, but
like Luca and Turning Red are both amazing. But then
Soul was
they
good.
also make like Lightyear and Elemental, which are less good.
Yeah. And what was the Chris Pratt Tom Holland one?
Oh, Onward, that fucking sucks.
Yeah, that's not a
Fucking
good one.
hate that one. It's the worst Pixar movie in my opinion.
Is down there. And
Yeah.
we're talking about the year of Cars right now. And
Yeah. God, one of the takes that I get the most hate for is the fact that I think Cars 2 is better than the original Cars
I've only
because
seen the first Cars.
I cannot stand that first Cars movie. And at least Cars 2 is interesting in the way it fucking sucks. It's
That's the
like
one where like they
it's
have
this
Michael
weird
Caine and Helen
spy
Mirren,
thriller movie.
right?
It's just like, what the fuck's going on?
Is Helen Mirren in that one, or is she in Monsters University?
I think she's
She
on
in
Monsters
both.
University. She plays like the headmistress.
That makes sense. I mean, not it doesn't like it tracks, but it doesn't make sense. It sucks.
I mean,
That's
Helen Mirren does a lot of stuff.
that's
She's not a hard get. She's like Judi Dench.
that's fair.
Like,
But yeah, Cars, another animated movie from around this time that I watched a bunch as a kid because we had that DVD, and I can't stick up for that, for the fact that I did that.
and honestly, like since we're just on the topic, I just want to say Monster House was robbed. Like I haven't really given my opinion on these other lineups we've talked about when maybe I'm more passionate about some of those other ones, but Monster House is clearly better than Cars and Happy Feet. And I know you said you hadn't seen Monster House, but it's really inventive. I really like Monster
Yeah,
House.
that tracks from like the even just like what I've seen of it visually.
And hey, it's the perfect time for it. Like it's October 30th. Watch it today or tomorrow. It's perfect timing.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I'm not gonna force you to do that. Don't worry.
I would hope not. I would hope that you're not gonna fly all the way over here on Clockwork Orange me into watching Monster House of all things.
I'm actually right in front of your door.
Oh no.
It's
Oh
like
no.
you just hear me like on the subway and things like that, just like in the background, and it's
Go
like,
back and re-listen to the episode. You can hear the whole journey.
and it's just like, and suddenly you start hearing your voice and coming back from me.
It just ends in a feedback loop and the episode cuts out because
Mhm.
we're recording around Halloween and putting it up in January, so it does not work thematically.
Halloween in January, like
Yeah.
Christmas in July too. Halloween in January.
Let's just mix them all up. Why not?
Merry Christmas. I mean, we did have a Christmas short film this year.
We did.
We had
Yeah.
Little Match Girls, a Christmas movie.
And a Danish one. If we're just mentioning them, why not? There's an
Sure.
alien one too.
I was about to say two alien ones, but I guess time travel is an alien.
No, not necessarily. And although Scrat does genocide a planet of aliens.
Yeah, there is aliens
Canonically.
involved in the other ones.
Canonically.
Like he does Scrat.
Tangentially alien.
God, it's so weird that like Scrat canonically finds a spaceship and goes to outer space and fucking creates the universe.
That sucks so bad. I almost respect it.
Like I said, Scrat jumped the shark early.
Yeah, because he fucking looks like that. It's bad. Bad character design. Not fun to look at.
Oh, you're really gonna like the story of Scrat, the Scrat lawsuit.
I am riveted.
But so let's just speed up to me getting to tell you that we've clearly have nothing else to say about No Time for Nuts outside of the fact that it sucks. Like we've gone on a 15-minute tangent after you talking about Scrat and 9/11.
Yeah.
It is so. I think
he's on the planes.
No, I was imagining him like
just like Ground Zero.
I was imagining him like the ending of Remember Me, the Robert Pattinson
Oh
infamous
no,
thing.
he's in the towers.
Yeah, he's in the towers. He's like looked behind him, sees a plane, like screams, and then the time travel thing takes him away.
I honestly would not be surprised. They invoke the RMS Titanic, not just in imagery, but in name.
Like he's literally on the iceberg that sunk the Titanic, and we see that. Though the Titanic in there to me is like that's not how the Titanic hit the iceberg. In fact, if it Titanic did hit the iceberg that way, it wouldn't have sunk as fast as it did.
Yeah, it sucks. It
Yeah,
sucks. Bad short.
yeah. Anyway, now that we've gone through and talked about the five nominees, let's rank them all. Gordon, start us off with your number five.
It's Scrat. I haven't even retained what it's called. I care
No
about it.
Time for Nuts, and
No
that is
Time
also
for
my
Nuts.
number five. With
Yeah,
it's it's
regardless of what the plot would have been for this one, this was already penciled in as number 5 for me before even watching it because it's fucking Scrat and I don't like Scrat.
honestly, I'm just really glad this is the episode you were on. This is a very good
Yeah,
episode for you.
yeah, I got to do a Scrat rant, a Scrant.
Scrant.
Got to Scrant all over the place.
I've done multiple scrants on this podcast because
God,
it's just so easy to scrant about him.
yeah, you just sometimes you just gotta Scrant with a friend.
But yeah, No Time for Nuts is just a very uninteresting, unfunny scratch short. It's clear to see, like I don't understand why this was nominated, but it's clear to see why this was the last time he was nominated.
Yeah.
Number four.
Um, I probably should have thought about this or remembered.
I
Probably
can just list them off for you if you
no.
like.
I got it. I just was so blindsided by my rage at the invocation of Scrat that I momentarily forgot everything else we talked about for the past hour and a half.
The
Uh,
Invocation of Scrat would be a good name for a scratch short.
yeah, or like a ambient album
The
or
Exorcism
whatever.
of Scrat.
Yeah. My number 4 is Little Match Girl because it's it's it exists. I watched it.
And
That's
my Oh, go ahead.
no,
Uh,
just that was it. I
okay.
didn't even have an ending to that sentence, which is how little I have to say about it.
My number four is Lifted, which, just a fun little short. I'm glad Gary Rydstrom had fun. Number
Yeah.
three.
My number 3 is Maestro, which I probably objectively I would put that below Little Match Girl, but the effect that the punchline had on me of like, what that gave me more of anything than anything in Little Match Girl, which I was just sort of stone faced at the whole time.
Mhm.
If you can't even make me feel by from the ending of the Little Match Girl where you have a dead kid, like that's not great. And at least the ending to Maestro made me laugh, so that's my number 3 kind of by default of those two. But really you can they're kind of interchangeable in the ranking.
Mhm. And my number three is also Maestro. It's just a nice, simple little short about a little bird getting ready for his performance. And it's like I like the setting of the world we're in. It's like it has a very nice ambiance to it. And of course, I enjoy the punchline of it. It's just a nice little short, and I'm glad it got nominated because I feel like this was probably fifth place just because it is the most obscure one. And so I'm glad it got in. And uh, I'm disappointed that No Time for Nuts got it.
Yeah.
Anyway, number two.
Lifted again kind of by default. A short that I was, it's good. It's good for kids. It's funny, it's pleasant. The behind the scenes sort of meta narrative of it is more interesting than the actual short, but like it's fun. It's got some good jokes, it's got some good visuals, and sure, why not?
So I want to say my number one and my number two are very, very close, and it was a little bit hard trying to decide which one I liked more. And it's like it was a case of like one one of them was like going up in my best animated short rankings, one of them was going down in my best animated short rankings, and they both kind of just met in the middle. And I was just like, oh, which one do I like more? And the one that lost the battle for me was The Danish Poet, which I still really love a lot. It's still a really great short. I have so much love for everything about this short and Toro Cove, and it's just such a great little story about just like the interconnectedness of life and all the little like happenstances that lead to our lives being what they are. And it's just a nice little story, but it's not my number one. But what's your number one, Gordon?
My number 1 is the Danish poet for all that stuff you just said.
All right. And
Good.
my number one is The Little Match Girl, which, yes, when I was talking about it before, I had a lot more complaints than I did things to say positively about it. But at the same time, it's The Little Match Girl. It's a classic story that always gets my heart going, my tears running, and it's like I just think there is so much to love about the way the film tells it, even if there are little complaints I have with it, and the way I think it could have been much better. But at the same time, it's still great. I still really like this. It's still a Christmas classic for me. And yeah,
Yeah.
very different opinions between us today. It's like
Hey,
I
I
enjoyed this
love
lineup a
that.
lot more than you did.
I didn't dislike it. I just didn't have strong feelings about most of them.
Though
I
despite
have,
that, we still had a lot to talk about.
oh yeah, like we're like 15 minutes short of a 2-hour episode, it looks like.
Yeah,
Who knows how much we're gonna vamp on this outro, so
it truly anything could happen, and it's
anything.
just like and but it going into this episode, I was thinking that we might get close to the longest episode I've ever had, but it turns out we are going to be like 30 minutes short of that because
Oh wow.
Zeta's episode, I forget which one it was, but we randomly had a 2 hour and 15-minute episode one time, and it's just like
Okay.
it's fucking crazy. Actually, I think it might have been like the most recently released episode or one of the more recent ones. Or maybe it's not out yet. I don't even know. Oh, I don't really keep up with when my episodes go up. Uh like I just kind of retweet them on my own account and then just be like, "Oh, hey, it's Sashore coming." Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that one released a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, 2 hours and 16 minutes, and this one is looking to be the third longest one.
Oh wow, there's even one in
Yeah,
between.
we have an hour and
Well,
53 one. That's
third longest so far. We could still make it happen.
yeah. Well, we are currently making it happen, I think. Unless
Yeah.
I'm not totally certain when we started, so I don't know how long we were really at.
I
But
think it was right around 9:45 my time, and now it's 11:30.
and it's 8:30 for me. So, before we end our show, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Gordon, or anything you'd like to promote?
Final thoughts, not in particular. Uh, and to promote, check out my podcast. You've been on it multiple times. It's the Lone Acting Nominees. I imagine probably there's a significant overlap in our listenership just because, we have a lot of the same guests on
Mhm.
self-promoting. So, but yeah, if you haven't heard of it, I guess, which why would you have? It's very small if you're not, someone that already know. Uh, a long way. I don't know.
Take your
I'm
time.
just sort of tripping over my own tongue. Talk about movies that only got one Oscar nomination, which is in one of the acting categories. Do you know what day this episode is going up?
January 18th.
Okay, so at that point, oh, that's the same. Oh yeah, because we both upload
Yeah, we
on
do both do Thursdays.
the episode that'll be coming out today from when this episode goes up, or that will have come out today, is on Spencer. So,
Ooh.
because I have recently decided to actually plot out day by day when like the actual release dates for my episodes, and not just, oh, it's on the letterbox list, it'll come out at some point. But so yeah, Spencer from 2021, if I'm
Yeah,
remembering the year right.
2021.
Okay, yes. Yeah, okay, yeah. That will have come out today, so go listen to that one. I can only assume it'll be a good episode because I do not record nearly as far in advance
Yeah.
as the show does.
I'm honestly kind of shocked about how you record because it's like how do you keep up with it week by week? It's just like because
Hanging
like
by a friend.
yeah, it's like I find it. I there's times when it's like I have a guest who I want to come on, and then all of a sudden they're not able to do it, or it's like
Oh,
they're
I've had
busy.
that happen a lot,
They're
and
busy for
I
2 weeks.
scramble. I scram. It's just that I have enough, past guests and friends, and like I've also like it's October now, and I have scheduled out through to like uh the end of March as far as episodes that people have selected. So if at a certain point someone drops out, I can be like, hey, someone from further down the line, do you want to move things around and do a quick one. And so, but yeah, no, it is. I also don't know how I've managed to do it weekly without missing for 2 years now. So
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
far, fingers crossed.
Yeah, and yeah, for me, it's like I have my guests planned out up until, well, really just up until the end of the best animated short section on which ends on May 30th of next year. But I do have a few episodes planned out, not guests yet, but just a few episodes planned out up through August of next year.
Nice.
But yeah, and I don't know we'll see if actually any of that just stays or anything, because it's still very loose. I still don't know how I want to space everything out, but we'll see what happens when it happens. Actually, might as well ask this on the air though, but like when's the next time I'm going to be on? Like, when do you have me scheduled for?
Oh, let me see. Actually, let me pull that
I,
back
I
up.
think we're doing Cyrano
Maybe. Oh no, there is another one.
or
Cyrano
Johnny
we have
Eager. I
for,
forget.
wait, which one did you say?
I thought it's Cyrano or Johnny Eager, if I remember correctly.
The one that I have is Escape Me Never,
Oh yes,
which
yeah,
is
that one's really good.
sometime mid late February.
Okay,
What I have listed, but those
so
other, I do also have earmarked for you for.
that actually might come out the same time as your next episode.
Hey, always be closing.
Yeah, that'll, because your next episode comes out February 22nd.
That's the same. We did it again.
Yeah.
We did it again. That's the same exact day as the Escape Me Never episode. So be on the lookout for that as well in the future.
Yeah. God, it's gonna be, I wonder if we're gonna end up recording. So I have two episodes for you for the 2010s era. I wonder I'm just gonna record both of your episodes back to back.
I
Like
mean,
just the same
might as
session.
well. Might as well.
Yeah.
We're like what, 4 minutes out from the second longest episode.
I don't
I
know.
don't think I
We'll
don't think
find
we have,
out.
I don't have anything more to say to
I
that
don't
that long.
I
But
think you're overestimating how because I realized I sent you the Zoom link at 6:54.
oh, so I lied
You
about
did a
that.
lot. You
Never mind.
I started watching the last short at 6:45.
That is maybe the timestamp that I was clinging on to
But
when you were.
anyway, we'll see where this goes. We'll see how long it ends up being.
We
But
will.
but thank you, Gordon, for coming
Thank
on the
you.
show. And thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the short podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.